Hi, I'm Mark Honeybone from Property Ventures, and welcome to our weekly podcast where we interview prominent members of the investment community along with other professionals in the New Zealand property market. This is a free service from Property Ventures so that you can keep current and learn from some of the best around New Zealand. To check us out, take a look at propertyventures.co.nz. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Welcome back to the latest podcast. Now today's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to be interviewed and I'm going to talk to you about where I see the property market right now, because there's a lot of people saying a lot of different stuff. So I'm on my own, so we'll get started. And before we get started, I'm not talking about the whole country as a whole. Auckland is quite different than other parts of the country at the moment, and we will start off by talking about the Auckland market. Because I'm hearing from some people, some agents saying nothing's happening, it's dead. And hey, they might be right, they might not be right, and there may be a reason why that's happening to them. We did have a quiet October at Property Ventures, but last month and right now things are pretty active. There are buyers and sellers both out there doing what they are to try to buy or sell a property before Christmas. And yes, I do expect it'll go reasonably quiet for a month over the Christmas break, as it traditionally happens until late January, start of February maybe. But some people are saying the market is dead. Well, there's a couple of things have to happen right now. First of all, if you're a vendor selling, you have to be a bit realistic about the market. The market has turned. In fact, on the Herald just the other day, it was saying now the market average home in Auckland is no longer $1 million, so it's not $1 million city anymore. It was only about $950, I think it was. The market has moved, and there are buyers realise that they're in a strong position right now, not so much the sellers. Unfortunately, there's some sellers out there that still think they can put a high price on their property and they're going to get a high return. Well, that's just not going to happen unless it is in a particularly good area, one of the top suburbs, in a particularly good street and a particularly good property. But most properties aren't one of those properties. Now, the reason some of the agents might be a bit quiet at the moment is because they're telling stories about a vendor or a potential vendor's house. They're telling stories about what it might be, what it has been, but not what the facts are telling you right now, which is you might have a $900,000, well, it was a $900,000 property going upwards, but right now it might be worth $720 or $730, and there would be facts to show that it might only be at that price from recent sales on REINZ or other forms of bits and pieces you can find on the internet like RPNZ or Property Guru. So if the facts are saying that, and if the facts are saying it's 30% above RV on average, that's where it is. If it was up at 40% 3 months ago or 6 months ago, that's not now. That's not today. Right now, you may have missed a boat. So that's a concern for some people, the ones that aren't realistic, and for some of the maybe not so good agents or agents that just aren't up with the pace of what's actually happening day to day in the market. If that's the case, you're dead damn right. Some of the agents and some of the people are going to be very quiet and are now not getting any sales. So what you should be doing if you want to sell a property, you should be finding a good agent that will tell you exactly what the facts are now. Don't beat around the bush. They should be telling you that, hey, your property is worth this amount of dollars. You've seen down the road what it is. This one was a little bit different and got this price. There might be a reason for it. So find out what your place is worth. And if you are on the button with what it's worth right now, there are buyers out there. The buyers are in control a wee bit, as I said, but the buyers are out there and they're willing to buy property, and probably your property, if it's positioned right with the right price. So that's massively important right now. And if so, you can still sell your house and maybe still get in a multi-offer. We have been in some situations. We've got a couple of properties we personally think are positioned too high because the vendors won't come down, but we're also got some that are still going in multi-offer situation if they are coming to the market. The market continually moves, and you have to be on to where that market is, day to day, week to week, if you want to get a sale for your property, if that's what you want to do. And if you, as one of my staff says, if you want to hold out for that price, it might be 100k higher. That might be the perfect price. This will be in 2 years' time. So to summarise that, are there buyers around? Hell yeah, there definitely are. But you have to have the property positioned right for it. So the LVR rules have certainly been interesting, and they come in about 4.5 months ago. And as per usually happens when new rules change, it takes about 3 months for the investors and people to really understand, maybe get another strategy and think what they're going to do. And as far as investors are concerned, having to pay a 40% deposit, it certainly slowed down the market for those 3 or 4 months immediately after, and hence the reason we probably had a pretty quiet October for that exact reason. The other fact that's really making the market really hard for investors are the banks, and as a lot of you will know out there, to do with where the banks get their money from Australia. A lot of the banks aren't lending money, or they aren't lending much money. So how do you get money? You have to be a pretty good client, have a good history, and if you haven't got a good history, the banks are often saying no right now. So between those two points, that has been very hard for property investors in the last 4 or 5 months, and that's still currently the case. And how long that goes for, who knows? But it's taken a lot of the newer people out of the market, the newer investors. It was you could still get a $500,000-$600,000 place in Auckland and needed $120,000, and now you need $240,000 or $250,000. And a lot of the newbie investors, they have to, the disillusioned, they have to go back to the drawing board and go, where am I going to go? And then they might go to somewhere a little bit cheaper, like a Rotorua or Karawau or some place like that, which is fine. They can still get a start, or they get those high capital gains you get in Auckland. Who knows? How long will it last for? As I said before, who really knows? But that's been difficult and has taken a lot of people out of the market. So that has affected some markets, and my personal opinion is in Auckland, the high rental areas, and we all know where those sort of areas are, particularly some of the South Auckland suburbs, not all South Auckland suburbs. They are and will and currently are right now starting to hurt a little bit, because there's not so many home buyers out there. There are still home buyers in the better areas of all those suburbs, but taking all those, a lot of investors out there, it's been an investor-driven market for a few years, that's certainly softening up. The value's going up, and that's really is affecting the price. And as I said, now it is hurting some suburbs, and some vendors, when they're about to list a property, still don't understand or comprehend that the market isn't where it was 6 months ago. So in brief, just on the Auckland market, I see massive opportunity now, massive opportunity in the next probably 3 to 6 months, probably especially the next 3 months. But what will hurt us, as I said, some vendors still don't understand that their place isn't worth the price it is worth now, so you may have to hold off to get those deals. But some people know there are some desperate vendors right now, probably a lot more than it has been the last 2 years. So there are real opportunities out there now. My recommendation, if I was saying one, would say be patient and make sure you buy well, because as we know, you make your money when you buy, and especially in a market that's not necessarily going down, but staying flat and may stay flattish for a while, you need to buy well. Unless it's that perfect property with great cash flow, or you're doing something else with it. You might be subdividing and selling off, or whatever you are. Then you can potentially still pay some good money for a property. But all I say is be careful, do your research before you go out there and buy a property right now. Quite a few of the other markets are really quite different. This property cycle's pretty well followed the last couple, I guess. Started at Auckland, and then obviously Tauranga went immediately with Auckland, and Hamilton not far behind, and now it's sort of going to small town New Zealand. I don't call Wellington small town New Zealand, but Wellington is certainly going through an interesting growth period right now after being flat for about 8 to 10 years. And even now, we've had a couple or 4 properties just recently, and they've all, in fact, got one right now, but they've all got a multi-offer, and it's just where the market is. And interestingly enough, since the earthquake a few weeks ago, it seems as though a lot of people want to buy, Lower Hutt and upwards, just north of the city. We'll say that, and they are becoming really, really popular, and the prices are going very well. So that market is considerably different than the Auckland market we just spoke about, and probably is one of the hottest markets right now. Tauranga, I don't really know too much about, apart from places we were selling 4 and 2 bedroom new builds 3 years ago for $500,000, and now they're worth sort of $700,000. The market has gone obviously great there in the last few years. My only concern with the Tauranga market is there is a lot of land around there. There's that much land. Who knows what will happen in the future? But it's a great area. The dynamics of Tauranga have changed, I think, in the last 5 years, and that certainly helped the price go up with more jobs there and more security of the town. Hamilton's a bit like Tauranga, had a great surge in the last year. Everyone moved out of Auckland and brought in Hamilton once the LVR rules changed a year and a half ago in Hamilton, in Auckland only, when they needed 40% and the rest of the country only needed 20% deposit. So that went, as I said, through a great surge, and we know we had a heap of investors just buying normal residential stock down at Hamilton. I was just down there recently, and there's a lot still going on in Hamilton. It's getting closer and closer to Auckland each day. Not through the quakes like down south, where the move certainly has moved. But the motorways, it's certainly getting much closer, and there's a lot of opportunity still down there. So we're looking at working down there with a developer or a building company there over the next 12 months, and as per any development, you want to get involved, you get in early. So that's the idea with that. Other places, Blenheims and the Types and other places around New Zealand have certainly been in a pretty happy spot there recently. Some still are, some are just coming out at the end of it. I remember this very, very well 10 years ago. I bought a place myself right at the height of the market in one of those areas, and with the market falls 20% in those areas, it takes another 8 to 10 years to come back. So again, if you're buying for an investment in those areas, just be a little careful, I guess, would be what I'd say. But some of those areas are still going up. If it works for the figures again, everyone's goals are different, and everyone's a different strategy. So do what's right for you. Just again, be careful with what you're trying to achieve. And the last market I'll just touch on, but I won't tell you really about it, is Christchurch. That's an hour discussion on its own. Christchurch has certainly, since the last 5 years and the next 10 years, I think, a moving target of rental and sales of homes in different areas within Christchurch, all for different reasons. There's a massive opportunity to make big money in Christchurch, but you have to know exactly what you're doing and know all the rules and regulations of councils and what you can get consents and can't get consents. But there is a lot of opportunity down there. I'm personally loving having one of our newest team members, Slade, down there, because he's right on the button. He's an investor. He knows how it all works, and he's now providing good opportunity for some of our investors. But Christchurch is a very interesting market. But talk to me another day about that if you want to, or I'll get someone to discuss Christchurch with me. Maybe the idea with that one. So things to be aware of that may change the property market. Donald Trump, we had interviewed Matthew Blackwell on my most recent podcast, and he sort of covered that very, very well. He's a very knowledgeable man. So he wasn't as concerned as some people. Who knows what will happen there. Certainly the debt to income limit that's the biggest thing that could really damage the market, particularly in Auckland. If they bring it in next year before the elections next year, who knows? I would think they wouldn't. I've heard 2 good sources from other people. They might happen in about May. let's wait and see what happens with that. Earthquakes, you could say, seems to be what's going on in New Zealand far too much at the moment. Interestingly enough, they actually seem to provide more opportunity. And just on the most recent one, in Kaikoura, I was talking to someone I've known for about 15 years that lives there. She's a mortgage broker, has a lot of property herself. And interesting enough, she was saying houses that had gone unconditional or were still under contract in Kaikoura, the locals down there still had confidence that things are going to go well there, and are still settling and still carrying on most of those deals. So that's interesting for a small place like Kaikoura. But as we've seen, it certainly has provided opportunity. It's a horrible thing to go through, I can tell you that from experience. But they're the biggest things. The debt-to-income ratio certainly, for me, is the biggest scare that could happen coming up. We're very lucky, and despite John Key's going yesterday, announcing his retirement yesterday, we're in an extremely stable position. Our government is. We're pretty well respected around the country for a stable economy. And obviously, not only that everyone thinks we're the safe haven of the world, and we've had investors who have brought from overseas, brought our property, and I always ask them, I go, hey, why have you brought in New Zealand? And that's exactly what they say. They say it's a safe haven of the world, and that's sometimes the sole reason. If that's the case, let it keep rolling on like that, and let's keep the place safe like that. So sort of there you go. There's my sort of 15 minutes of fame on what I think's going on in the market right now. A lot of you won't be surprised with too much of it. Hopefully I've helped some people out. The property market, it's a moving game all the time. The LVR rules aren't going to stay there forever. Hey, there is talk it might go to 50% one day. They'll be back at 20% one day. You deal with what's in front of you, whether it's life or property, and you find strategies to work around it. If you ever have one strategy with property, you're not going to do perhaps quite so well. So you go with the flow, but have your overall goals and stick by it. But just understand the market, understand why it is. If it's less, the market's less, and you need to sell, you can still sell and still get people interested in it. If your place isn't selling, it's obviously marketed wrong, or there's something obviously wrong with the property, or the price is wrong and the price point's wrong. As I said, there's still buyers out there. Some are getting very good bargains. Some are still paying good money in multi-offer. So it just depends where you are. So we'll probably have one more podcast before we finish up for the year. But if we don't, I've really enjoyed the time with my database out there and all the people I meet every week and every day. It's a heck of a lot of fun, and I enjoy sort of giving my sixpence to people and helping them out where I can. So if you don't hear from me again this year, Merry Christmas, and we'll be back into it hard next year. Take care.